Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've spoken with several people this week and was telling them about this event, an opportunity to speak to judges. And the response was, are judges on the ballot? Was that a surprise to anybody here?
That people don't know we're on the ballot?
Right.
Well, you know, we're always at the very end, so
Right.
you have to vote the ballot all the way through to get to us.
They might get tired.
Yeah, they might get tired.
So I hope that all the people that I spoke with and all the people that you've spoken with will pay attention, and now they'll be better prepared. So my name is Janet Milkovich. I am a volunteer tonight. I am co-moderating with Patrick. I am the former president of the league, and we're just really grateful that you are here tonight. Also, we want to welcome our esteemed judges. We're so grateful that you took time in your busy lives and in this busy season to be here and educate us all. And this event is being co-sponsored by Shawnee Mission University. We call it Smooch, so I got to get it right. Shawnee Mission Unitarian Universal Church. I should say that. I've said it a million times. I always get it wrong. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, the Epsilon Rho Omega Chapter, League of Women Voters of Johnson County, and Mainstream Civic Engagement. So a few housekeeping things. If you need to know where the restrooms are, go out the door and go right and follow the signs. We are recording this program and we'll make this available after the event. It's also live streaming at the present time. And at the end of our program, there will be time for questions. So I hope you have a lot of questions, really hard ones, because the judges are used to that. And then you can write them on a postcard and we will collect them. So, the purpose of today's forum. This November, Kansas voters will be asked whether to retain or not to retain judges. On your ballot in Johnson County, you'll be asked to retain or not retain judges from the Kansas Appellate Court and the Johnson County District Court. We have seven judges from the Appellate Court and 10 from the District Court on the ballot. Did you know that? Okay, see how much you've already learned in the first 4 minutes, some of you. So tonight, our panel of judges will provide insight into the process and in their roles. So they are going to introduce themselves. We'll start with, please, Chief Judge Karen Arnold-Burger. Judge Arnold-Burger, thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. I really appreciate the job the league does to inform voters so that they know the issues and the people when they get to the ballot box. But I'm Karen Arnold-Burger. I'm currently Chief Judge of the Kansas Court of Appeals. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I grew up for the first part of my childhood in Kansas City, Kansas, the second part in Overland Park. Went on to Johnson County Community College and then University of Kansas undergraduate in law school. Married, have 3 wonderful children, all went to school in the Overland Park area. When I got out of law school, I went with an oil company and then ended up becoming employed by the city of Overland Park after a few years, then the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then the municipal judge in Overland Park, and then for the last 14 years, I've been on the Kansas Court of Appeals, the last 7 or 8 of which have been as Chief Judge.
Thank you. That's a big job. They're all big jobs. Now, Chief Judge J. Charles Draghi, welcome. Thank you. And would you tell us a little about you?
Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly, because no one gets it usually on the first try. So I go by Chuck. And so I am originally from St. Louis, went to Wichita State University in 1973, became a Kansan, and never looked back. I rooted for the Cardinals in the 1986 World Series, and the Royals
They're
beat
trying
them.
to decide whether to vote for you.
Yeah, no, I'm just showing it. I am a Royal. I became a Royal at that game. That was the one where they had the dispute at first base, and the Royals won, and we went on to win the first World Series with the Royals. So that's when I became a real Royals fan, and I've been a Kansan since I've been in Kansas. So graduated Wichita State University, got a bachelor in business, a master's in business, went on to law school at Washburn in Topeka, and graduated in 1984, did a stint in the district attorney's office in Shawnee County, and then came up to Kansas City and worked for a Kansas City, Missouri, Overland Park firm, Lindy Thompson and Morris Larson. Spent a few years as a private practitioner, then I was appointed by Kathleen Sebelius in 2007 as a district court judge. Been on the bench since that time, and in 2022, I became the chief judge. I think is that my road sign there?
You're doing fine. And now I'd like to introduce Judge Cameron.
Hi, I'm Brenda Cameron, and I sit on the Johnson County District Court. I've been on the district court bench for almost 22 years, 2 months shy of 22 years. I practiced for 13 years before that, started my practice in Salina, Kansas, where I'm originally from, and then came up to Kansas City, practiced in a variety of areas for 13 years, and then came on the bench in 2002. And so when I first came on, I was part of the juvenile offender docket. That's the docket that was open, and that's pretty much how it works. It's a seniority-based system, and so that's what was open. And I'd never done juvenile offender work before, but I loved it. Ended up really, really loving it. Stayed 9 years, then went to adult criminal, that docket for almost 10 years. That's what I knew was adult criminal in practice. So stayed there for about 10 years, and then decided to go back to juvenile offender. So I've enjoyed that. I've been back it was about when during COVID, that I went back to juvenile offender. So I'm back enjoying that. I serve on a number of boards and committees, and as we all do. I am the president of the Kansas District Judges Association. I serve on the Commission for Judicial Conduct. I've done that for about 8 years, as well as a number of other boards and commissions and whatnot. So happy to be here. I have spoken to the league before. It's been a lot of years, and I'm happy to be back. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. And I noted that you were started as a public defender.
I
in
did.
This long process of.
I did. That was very eye-opening. Yeah. Brand new out of law school. I was on a temporary license, and so it's just felonies for public defenders, and I was out in Salina. We had 7 counties, so I was driving all over the place trying to figure out what to do, and it was the greatest experience. I was in court all the time, and I discovered I loved it. So, and then came to Kansas City, was at the district attorney's office here after that.
Well, thank you for that. And now we have Judge Sarah Werner. A little note of trivia, Judge Werner has 4 undergraduate degrees. I think that deserves a round of applause just on the top. Judge Werner, will you tell us about yourself?
Yes, and thank you so much. It's so great to be here. My name is Sarah Werner, and I serve on the Kansas Court of Appeals with Chief Judge Arnold-Burger. And I have served on the court since the summer of 2019. And so I joined the court, and then about 8 months later, we shut everything down. But it wasn't my fault. I just want to make that clear. I grew up in Pittsburg, and then I went to KU for undergraduate. And as Janet said, I have this interest in lots of things. And so some people switch majors. I just kept adding them. And so I majored in mathematics and French and political science and international studies. And those are great degrees, but they don't really get you a job after. And so I was trying to decide, am I going to go to graduate school or law school? And I worked for a law firm in Lawrence, and I decided that this is something that I'm passionate about, that it's something I'd really like to do. So I went away to law school in Michigan, and then my husband and I came back. He's from Leavenworth, and we settled in Lenexa after law school, and I had the opportunity to work with the Chief Justice of the Kansas Supreme Court directly out of law school, a guy named Robert Davis, who was just fabulous. And I worked with him for about 3.5 years, and then went into private practice in Lawrence, and had a small firm in Lawrence that did civil litigation and constitutional litigation and appellate work, the work that we see every day. And then I was fortunate enough to be selected by Governor Kelly in 2019 for our court, and then confirmed by the Kansas Senate.
Congratulations to you all. You're very impressive, and we're so thrilled you're here. We're going to start our questions now. Patrick, I'll give it to you.
All right, so first I got one for Judge Draghi. That's right?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the current process for selecting district judges in Johnson County?
Okay, so across the state, you could either be an elected district or you could be what we call a merit district. And in Johnson County, we have a commission. It's the Johnson County Judicial Nominating Commission. And it's a process where someone must make application to become a judge. The applications and then are vetted by 7 attorneys picked from the Johnson County Bar and 7 laypersons who are appointed by the Johnson County Commissioners. And so those people who apply come and interview before that commission. Judge Arnold-Burger at one time was the chairperson of that commission.
When you were selected, I think.
I think when I was selected. And I'll tell you what, the process to go through as a district court judge and the application is almost exactly the same as an appellate court judge or as a Supreme Court judge. And honestly, Judge Arnold-Burger is the one who started that. It used to be you would just take your resume and go have an interview. And so it's a very thorough process. The people have an FBI background check. There are all kinds of, I think they do a credit check. They make sure that the person is an upstanding citizen. And then they also make sure that they know they've had some experience and they know what it would take to be able to be appointed as a judge. And then out of the group that applies, it's usually 3 persons are nominated by that committee to the governor. And then the governor appoints 1 out of that 3 person panel.
Very cool. Now for Judge Arnold-Burger, right? For selecting judges of the Kansas court, oh wait, sorry. I think I messed up.
The process for selecting on our court?
Yeah, it's the process for selecting judges of
So
the
it's
Kansas
very,
court.
very similar. The appellate judges in Kansas, both the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, are under the merit selection plan, which is what Judge Draghi explained for the district court. There's for the Kansas Supreme Court, there's a different nominating commission that is selected in a similar way that reviews applications and vets people for the Supreme Court. In 2014, the method for selecting judges on our court changed a little bit in that the governor can select whomever they want, and then that person goes with no kind of vetting ahead of time except through the governor, and then that person goes before the Kansas Senate, and the Senate has to confirm them. So it's very much like, we call it the federal system light, because you go before a nominating commission or you go before the Senate for approval, but then you still have to come up for retention every year. It's not lifetime appointment like the federal judges are, so that's why we call it federal system light. But our current governor has decided that she wants to have a nominating commission in place. She doesn't want to have just everybody, her having the ability just to say, okay, I've known Chuck for many years. I think I'll appoint him to the bench. She selected a nominating commission that's made up of attorneys and non-attorneys that she has all the applicants submit their application to. And then they're reviewed just as Judge Draghi was reviewed before the Johnson County Nominating Commission, and just like Kansas Supreme Court justices are reviewed before the Kansas Supreme Court Nominating Commission. So it's a very, very similar practice. The only difference in practice for Court of Appeals judges is we do have to go before the Senate now and be confirmed by the Senate. And then every 4 years, Court of Appeals judges and district court judges come up on the ballot for the voters to decide, should we retain this judge in office or not? You just vote yes or no. So this year, there are no Supreme Court justices on the ballot. They have 6-year terms rather than 4. And as they've indicated, we have 14 total Court of Appeals judges. Half of them are up this time. The other half will be up 2 years from now. And the district judge, probably based on when people have come on, it hasn't quite evened out exactly half and half, but a large percentage every 2 years are on the ballot. So
It sounds like a very vigorous process. And Judge Draghi, how long did it take you to work through that process?
So I applied probably 3 to 4 times, and I believe it was maybe on the 4th time that my name, I was nominated to the governor a couple of times, but never picked. It's sort of my story of my life. You know, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. But eventually then, on about the, I want to say 3rd or 4th time that I went up before the governor picked me.
That's a lesson for all of us on perseverance as we're trying new things, right? So our next question would be for Judge Cameron and Warner. And the question would be, what types of cases and issues come before your courts? And how do you decide what issues to address? Judge Warner, would you like to take that first?
Sure. So the Kansas Court of Appeals is what we call a court of general jurisdiction. So that means, as an appellate court, if someone thinks that a mistake has happened at the district court level, they can ask the appellate court to take a look at that mistake. And so we hear all kinds of cases. We hear criminal cases, we hear civil cases, family law cases, you name it. If there's a case that's been filed in Kansas courts, then in general, they have a right to appeal to our court and have us take a look. There are only a few exceptions to that. We do not hear appeals in capital murder cases. Those go straight to the Kansas Supreme Court. And then if a statute has been held unconstitutional by the trial court at the district court level, then that case also goes straight to the Kansas Supreme Court. But otherwise, you name it, across the board, it comes to us. Now, you asked a really important question, which is, how do we decide the issues that we want to that control our decision? And the answer is that we don't really get to decide those issues. The parties get to decide those issues. The litigants who file the lawsuits get to decide the issues that come before the courts. So we just simply decide the questions that are presented to us by the parties in their briefs and then asked to us during oral argument in front of us. And we simply resolve those questions based on the law in light of whatever the facts are that come before us. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I suppose, we have very little control over that side of things.
So Judge Cameron, how do you answer that question for your courts?
We also don't decide what lawsuits are filed or what criminal cases are filed. The DA's office in criminal cases, in juvenile offender cases, the prosecutor will decide after reviewing reports, decide if a case is filed and what charges are filed, and then a judge is assigned. I'm assigned to the felony juvenile offender cases, and our magistrate is assigned to the misdemeanor cases. We have jury trials if someone requests it. They may end up pleading. That's the defendant or respondent's decision whether to enter a plea or not, or to go to trial. They decide whether to testify or not testify. So the defendant has a lot of rights, respondent has a lot of rights in a criminal juvenile offender case. But we don't tell the DA's office what to file or not file, of course. And a defendant respondent, again, has a lot of constitutional rights, and they may file a motion to suppress evidence. They might file a motion in limine to keep this evidence out or this in. So a lot of the motion work, that's decided by the lawyers too, what motions to file that would come before the court. So we don't decide what cases come before us in civil. If a litigant, a person feels they've been aggrieved and they want to file a lawsuit, they hire a lawyer. They could also file pro se, but they would file a lawsuit, and then that gets assigned to one of the judges on our civil bench. So that's how cases get assigned in very simple terms, how they get assigned to district court judges.
Thank you for keeping the terms simple for us. The league did a program a couple of years back about juvenile justice in Kansas, so maybe sometime we can revisit that with you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
For Judge Arnold-Burger, what qualities should voters look for in a judge in deciding whether to retain the judge?
I think you should ask yourself what kind of qualities would you want in a judge that you were before for your case, whether it was a civil case, a contract dispute, a family law case, or whatever. What qualities would you want that judge to have? And I think it's probably pretty self-evident. You want somebody that's intelligent, that can handle your matter and understand what your issues are, whether they're simple or complex. You want somebody that, so they understand the law, they have a knowledge of the law. You want somebody that's fair and has exhibited a career and fairness and opportunity to give each side an opportunity to present their case. Someone that's civil or nice. I think a lot of us who are judges really disliked when Judge Judy became very popular because people felt that that's how judges acted on the bench. And I don't think generally if you had a contested case, you would want somebody that acts like Judge Judy. So those are the kinds of things you look for. Now, of course, the next logical question is, well, how do we know if the judges that are on the ballot have those qualities? And the first thing is, I will tell you, is these nominating commissions did a lot of the work for you. As Judge Draghi described, when you go before a nominating commission, they're looking at everything about you. They're looking at your grades in school. They're looking at how you've done as an attorney. They're contacting not only attorneys you practiced with, but attorneys you practiced against to see what your reputation is. So to some extent, this nominating process in merit districts like Johnson County has done a lot of the work for you because the person wouldn't have gotten the position if they didn't meet those standards. So I think that would be one thing to look for. I don't know if if you're going to ask me another question about that, but let me follow up too to tell you that there's also ways you can find out about individual judges and do your own deep dive. You can go on the Kansas, for appellate judges, you can go on the Kansas court website, and all of our written decisions are there. You can look at any decision we've written and decide whether you think that we're a good writer or we have a good way of analyzing things. In most of our cases in the Court of Appeals, you can also go online and watch oral argument, and they're archived. So you can go back and see prior oral arguments. You can see how and you're going to have to look a little bit because there are 14 of us. We sit in panels of 3. So we're running, 4 panels a month at least, sometimes 5. So you'll have a lot of stuff to go through to catch all 7 of us at some time. But you'll be able to see how we act on the bench, what kinds of questions do we ask, and ask your friends and neighbors who have been in the court. One of our moderators used to live next door to one of our judges, and so she knew that judge very well, and I'm sure would be able to tell people a lot about that judge and their qualifications. So you can do as deep a dive as you want, I suppose, where you can trust the system that's in place that they wouldn't have been there had they not already met those minimum criteria at least.
Thank you. That was going to be a follow-up, so you breezed us through that. Thank you. But we do have a question because people don't know why we vote to retain, but there's no competition. And I think you've explained to us there's a process, therefore there wouldn't be 2 judges running. It's strictly retention. But we were talking before the panel began, some people don't know enough about the judges, so they tell you and us, they just vote no. How do you all feel about that? And anybody can answer that question.
Let me start first. First, I'd ask you to put yourself in a position of having a job that you do well and that you're good at, and people are able to decide whether you get to keep your job or not. And people decide, because they don't know a lot about you, that they're just going to vote no, you shouldn't keep your job. Well, what that's going to result in is very talented judges losing their jobs. And what that's going to result in is people not willing to give up their successful private practices to become judges. Because why should I give up everything to devote myself to public service as a judge when a fickle electorate is going to throw me out after 4 years? So voting no can have some long-term consequences. And I'm not saying you shouldn't vote no if you know the judge and feel they shouldn't be retained. I personally would, it hurts when people say, I don't know him, so I'm just going to vote no. Let me mention one more thing, and I'll give everybody else a chance to talk, but I wanted to mention this before. For appellate judges, and the Johnson County Bar Association does this for district judges as well, the Kansas Bar Association does a survey of all the attorneys in the state. So you can go on the Kansas Bar Association website, and you'll see something, this is not in color, but you'll see something like this that says what percentage of the respondents thought the judge should be retained, and what was their overall ranking. And it's even more specific than that. It asks, it ranks each judge on their knowledge of the law, their fairness. I mean, there are several different areas that it's ranking them on. So you can go to the Kansas Bar Association website and find each of the 7 appellate judges that's on the ballot. You can find how the attorneys in the state ranked them. And the Johnson County Bar Association also does something similar for district judges. And that survey just came out today, I think,
Yes.
so I'd be watching.
We spoke yesterday, when's that survey coming out? And so it is out, and I think if you've been a litigant in Johnson County, you will get a notice of that survey. It surveys all the attorneys who appear before those judges. Anybody can fill out the survey. I think if you go to if you've had an experience with a judge or a court, you can go to that website, the Johnson County Bar Association, and that's there. The current survey will be there, and then the prior surveys and the results will be there. So some of these I've been a judge since 2007. All of the surveys that have been, the results have come back about me are on there. And I always put mine up there because I get good grades, so I'm always.
So in other words, instead of voting no, do your homework. There are resources for all of us. Does anybody else have a comment they'd like to share about the just vote no?
If I could, it's one of those things, and as Chief Judge Arnold-Burger said, it hurts a little bit. But that's because people don't become a judge for the fame and fortune. They do it because they have an aptitude for the law and a love of the law, and just a passion for fairness, I think, is why you put your name in, and you've heard about this grueling process that you have to go through to become a judge. And so in order to put yourself out there to do that, you have to really have a passion for that. And then if you haven't heard anything that causes you to have pause or gives you pause about any judges, that means that they're doing their job well. That means that they're deciding cases fairly, and they're just deciding the cases that come before them based on the facts and the law. And so when I hear someone who says that their default is to just vote no, I think, well, I just need to talk to that person about the process a little bit so they understand the kind of what it takes to become a judge, and then also what the day-to-day life of a judge is. We don't want new judges all the time, right? We want to be able to vest people with some experience.
Thank you all for your answers to that. Our viewers at home will be educated, and those that go online later, so we're having this opportunity to share with the community at large. That's helpful. Patrick?
For Judge Draghi, what kinds of steps, or what steps do you take to ensure fairness and impartiality in the courtroom?
So the overriding principle to be fair and equitable in a court is to follow the rule of law. That's your beacon. If you follow the rule of law, then and you're not trying to pick a side, but follow the law, then you should be okay. Somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose, usually in a case like that. And but we try to have as much access to the court as we can. We are calling that access to justice. We have our courts are open, and since COVID, many of our courts we participate by electronic means by Zoom, so people don't have to take off work. In many cases, one of our biggest dockets are family court type situations or criminal court situations where you're just scheduling something. What we've done now is a lot of those people will appear by technology, by a Zoom hearing, for a 5-minute hearing, so they don't have to take the whole day off of work and come in. So we're always trying to develop a system that everybody feels that they've been treated fairly and equitably, and if we reach that point that we do that, then we feel like we're pretty successful.
That's great, thank you. And Judge Cameron, what kinds of processes exist that oversee judicial discipline and ethics? We've been reading a lot about, on a federal level, the need for more ethics and discipline. How does that work in Kansas?
We have, I mentioned I was on the Judicial Conduct Commission, and that commission, I've been on it 8 years now, and we'll probably serve another 4. But that commission is made up of lawyers, judges, and non-lawyers, and complaints against judges across the state come to the commission, and we review those complaints. There are 2 different panels, and so these panels look at the complaints. I'm on A. Panel A will review the complaints that come. I've got a meeting tomorrow and lots to review this week to look at those complaints very, very carefully. And then we'll discuss it tomorrow with Panel A. We'll discuss these cases and what we think, were any rules violated, what needs to happen. And that panel can either determine that there is no violation. We can determine that we need more information. We can ask the judge to respond to the complaint. We can ask, we have an investigator to go investigate, maybe interview people that could have been in the hearing, interview the clerk if somehow they were involved, just to go out and fully investigate, get transcripts of a hearing if depending on the allegations, so we can send it for further investigation. And then if we determine there has been a violation, we can impose some discipline, find a violation, impose some discipline if it is denied by that judge still, or if it's significant enough of a penalty, then it will go to the Supreme Court. But if they deny, and my panel has found a violation, they deny, we then send it to panel B for a trial. So we've heard all the investigative stuff, and just they go in then with a clean slate, the complainant and the judge. The judge will go in front of that panel B for a trial. So we then, that panel, the trial panel, and the vice versa with B. If B finds a violation, the judge says, no, I didn't do that, or I'm not accepting this sanction, then it comes back to A. So there's some safeguards in terms of if we find a violation, it then goes to trial before the other panel who hasn't heard anything yet. They're not tainted by any investigative anything. It's just a clean slate, and the examiner, the prosecution, so you will has to prove their case. So it's pretty rigorous. It's a lot of work, and I think it really makes for the discipline of judges. Our panel, again, made up of lawyers, non-lawyers, and judges, determines if there's a violation. If it's serious enough, then the Supreme Court, it goes to the Supreme Court to determine what the penalty should be, if any. They may say, no, we find no violation, we find no penalty necessary. So that's what the commission does in the state of Kansas for all judges when there are complaints made.
I find it reassuring that there are consequences.
Oh, sure.
Thank you for
You're
answering
welcome.
that question.
This is for Judge Strege and Arnold-Burger. What efforts have you made to educate the public about the judicial system and the role of judges?
Please speak.
Well, we take it very seriously. I think we've found that civics education is somewhat lacking, and so we view it as our responsibility to go out to different groups and explain how the judicial branch works, because people know a lot about how the legislature works and how the president or the governor or the police, the executive branch works, but they don't know much about how the judicial branch works and how it fits into that. So we all spend a lot of time going to rotaries and high schools and grade schools and you name it. On the Court of Appeals, we're considered a traveling court. So we'll have one docket every month in Topeka, but the other 4 dockets will be in other places around Kansas, Wichita, Kansas City, Kansas, Kolbe, Pittsburg. And when we go to those locations, we make it a point to get in touch with the high schools there, the grade schools, and the different civics organizations to talk about what we do. Many of our judges also have their own professional organizations that they go to or are involved with. Judge Warner is a professor at the University of at Washburn Law School. So we take our role very seriously and view that as part of our responsibility to go out and educate the public.
If anybody wants to see the Court of Appeals, they'll be sitting in our Johnson County Courthouse next
2 weeks.
Tuesday.
The 15th.
Week from Tuesday.
Week
Yes,
from
a week
Tuesday.
from Tuesday.
Yeah,
October
week from
15th.
Tuesday. So one of the ways that the Court of Appeals gets out to work. And our Kansas Supreme Court will be sitting at Spring Hill High School in November. So anybody who wants to see how the court sits, you don't have to go to Topeka for that. You go right out to Spring Hill and see that. Now, with our Kansas District Court, our judges are very involved in the community. We just recently, 2 weeks ago, throughout the state, we start with the young kids. At the 3rd grade level, one of our judges, Judge Winnell, we call it Constitution Day, and it's one day every year where we bring the school children in to educate them about how the justice system works. In that case, they tried a case in the courtroom. A young man was running in the hallway, and so he had a lawyer. But this is starting at the grassroots, getting people to understand the process, and sort of a civics lesson is one way we do that. And our judges go out and they speak to nursing homes and to other places that invite them, or they try to get invited. And so that's how we try to get out and meet with the community. We're involved. We do a Habitat for Humanity. We have in the past, haven't recently, and we work with some of the group homes. And our Bar Foundation is very involved with charities and being involved with the citizens out there. And I just got the red light, so I'll stop. No, that wasn't right.
I'd also say any of you listening who want to have a judge come speak to your group, just call us.
Please, yeah.
We'll send somebody. So just call Judge Draghi for the district court, call me for the Court of Appeals. We'll get somebody to your location.
Well, Judge Arnold-Burger, when you came to our Girl Scout event,
Yes.
You gave the girls things to try, situations.
Right.
And then you also let them try on your robe, which was a
Yes,
really
that's
fun.
always a big hit. In fact, we just ordered littler robes because, they look just swimming in these big robes. So the little ones, they just love that.
That's wonderful. So if you're involved in a school program, church program, we have opportunities to learn more firsthand. So thank you. So before our last question, we'd like to know if you have any cards, any questions from the audience you'd like to share with us. And if so, give them to Marie, I think, and Marie will bring them up. And our last questions are directed to Judge Warner and Cameron. What in your background, I know the answer for one of you, what in your background best prepared you for a judicial career? Was it math?
Logic.
There is something to that. We talked about how I, at one point in my life, was having trouble making decisions. Let's just say that. But one of the things I talked about how I was a math major. That prepared me for appellate work and for judicial work, because you're just stepping through the rational process. You're looking at the cases or the statutes or the constitutional provisions that govern. You're looking at the facts. And then, and of course, you're bringing in your own experiences as well. and then you're deciding what is fair based on the law and the facts. So there's something to that. But I would say that the thing that I don't know if there's one thing that I could point to that prepared me for a career. I think that in hearing all of our backgrounds, you heard about all of the different things, all of the different ways that a person becomes a judge. And I will say that especially on the court that Judge Arnold-Burger and I sit on, when we sit in panels of 3, it's designed to be a collaborative court. It's designed to bring people with different experiences together so that you can discuss the cases and discuss the law and come to what is a fair conclusion in light of that. And so I guess I'm skirting the question, but the answer is everything. Yeah.
That's a fair answer.
I think my varied experience in practice, I practiced in small jurisdictions, large jurisdictions. I was first the public defender, as Janet noted, so we had 7 counties. The big one was Salina, so it's more of a medium, I think. But we had 7 counties. I tried felony jury trials in Beloit and Lincoln and Abilene and let's see, Belleville, Concordia, Washington, all these small places, little courtrooms, courthouses, defending the indigent charged with felonies. So that was my first experience. Then I went on the other side and I was a prosecutor, so I learned the other side of the coin. But it made me a better prosecutor, I think. Made me a more fair prosecutor. I went from there to Austin, Texas, where I was in the appellate division of the DA's office. So I got some appellate work there, which was good for me, I think. And then I came back to, is she telling me to?
No,
No.
we've heard static. We're trying to figure
static.
out.
Oh, is that what that means?
That's right.
I
one of
get a
us is-
little,
We're being very low key about it.
okay, sorry, I just saw this and I'm like, uh-oh. My last job was in private practice. And so public sector, private sector, so I think I had a good variety of different experiences in my work. And I think that helped me a lot to be a more fair judge. I knew both sides. I had done the public and the private, and really enjoyed the private practice. Was making a lot more money. Even 22 years ago, I was making more money than now. So, but it was, I really have a affinity for public service, and that's what moves me, I guess. The money was good, and I enjoyed it. I tried a lot of good cases, worked for a great guy, and but I think that all that helped me be a better, more fair judge.
Thank you. And do we have any questions? Miss Marie?
I'm going to try not to be all.
You know, one thing they're looking through is, one thing we told them before we came is we can't talk about any pending case or any case that may be pending in our courts. We're simply not, our ethical code does not allow us to do that. So I'm sure they're trying to go through those and see if any of them meet that criteria.
Yes, we are. Thank you. Yes.
So, first question from the audience. How often are judges rejected by voters?
Over the years, it hasn't happened that frequently, you know, probably a handful over the years. I don't know that many, and maybe it's because we suppress it, don't want to think about it. But as we were talking the other night, I think that the Judicial Ethics Panel has a lot to do with that, in that judges that get in trouble, that aren't doing a very good job, end up deciding not to put in for retention again. So, so judges that you think would have a chance of not being retained just don't put themselves out there. I don't know if you agree with that, Brenda. Or...
Yeah, absolutely. So we have one tomorrow who decided to step down, retire, but we as a panel still often will go through the process, and if there's a violation, we find a violation, because we don't want that person to apply again if they have found themselves in trouble and in the soup. Just to retire, okay, that's fine, but we don't want them to put their name in again and run for election, or put their name in to be appointed. So we still go through the process and determine whether there's been a violation, even if they do decide I better get out, that was kind of bad.
I guess my response would be the system kind of takes care of that.
Agree.
Thank you. So we talked about consequences and if a judge has some accusations made that they're maybe not fair. But what is the process for the state Supreme Court if a judge has a reputation of being unfair? How are they held accountable?
How are state Supreme Court justices held accountable? It's the same process, that exists. So all judges in Kansas are subject to that same process. We're all subject to these judicial canons that provide some ethical boundaries for us, but also subject to the same disciplinary process that Judge Cameron was describing.
And there have been examples in our lifetime of Supreme Court justices, they're not justices currently on the court, but who were brought before the panel for discipline for various things.
And of that number, did some leave the bench from there?
The one I'm thinking of did not. He wasn't, he was admonished not to do what he did again, but.
We call it censured.
Yeah, we call it
Public
censured.
censure. Your name goes out to the public that you have committed some violation of the ethical rules. And there's degrees, so it could be a censure saying that this person violated and they promise they'll never do it again. A person could be suspended. A judge could be, they could be had their position taken away if it's serious enough. That's not happened, but the censure is an awful, it's a good tool because people don't want to be censured and have their name out in the public as having done something inappropriate.
And that censure is, it's not just the person's name, but it's a written opinion that describes what happened, and so the public can see what happened and what the investigation found and what the discipline was because of it.
Next question. Besides the Kansas Bar Association's judicial survey and Google, how can members of the public get reliable information on judges to help them decide how to vote on retention?
That's a little bit redundant for some of the things that you said, but do you have anything to add to that?
Well, we have a Johnson County website that has sort of a bio of all the judges. That's one way to get some information. I suppose if you have access to some of the places that put judges' decisions, who make written decisions, you could read their decisions and decide whether or not they have a good grasp of what's going on. You could come out to the courthouse any day and come out and sit in a courtroom.
As a visitor.
Yeah, as a visitor, right. Yes, as a visitor. Well, you don't want to.
Important to note.
Or a party. I mean, if your neighbor is causing you problems. No, I'm being facetious, but no, we're open. And, our courthouse, we have, like I said before, a lot of our hearings are on Zoom. If you even wanted to Zoom into, say, like a first appearance of a criminal docket and see how that judge handles people who are just now being charged with something and bond is being set and the discussion happens, you could do that as well too. So there are a lot of ways that you can do your own research and try to make a decision.
Wonderful, thank you.
And if I could hop in real quickly, Janet, just as Chief Judge Arnold-Burger pointed out, for our court, for anyone who is just inspired by listening to what we're talking about, you could go home, you could go on to the Kansas Judicial Branch's website, which is kscourts.gov, and you can, if you hit on search decisions, you can see all of the decisions from our court. And so you can
Or search argument.
Yeah,
You can see
and if you
ones from
search
Topeka.
search arguments, you can see the arguments that have been held in Topeka. You can see all of our Zoom arguments. We have a YouTube page, and so that's what I was going to say. You can go home and you guys can just binge our YouTube page if you want to, and watch all of the and just see how we handle cases. I think that that's a really good tool, and it's one of the there aren't a lot of benefits that came out of the pandemic, but that is a real benefit that in terms of making the judicial system accessible to the public.
So you're saying YouTube, not TikTok, right?
That's right.
I don't even know how to use TikTok.
Okay, our final question. Do our courts have enough judges and staff to do their docket loads fairly and in a timely manner?
I can say for the Kansas appellate courts, we definitely do. The legislature has been very good at looking at our needs and increasing the number of judges at our level and at the district court level too. Our Chief Justice of the Supreme Court has been has been involved with the legislature quite closely to do studies to see what judicial districts out there need more people, and the legislature has responded to that in the last few years, I think.
Wonderful.
What do you think?
Well, Judge
Well, he's the chief, and we just got new judges too.
So I'm the
but-
chief of our 10th Judicial Johnson County District Court. Judge Cameron is the current president of the Kansas District Judges Association. So she hears from judges all around the state. As far as our judges, I think we're pretty well blessed with certainly the talent that we have on our bench. We have 25 of the most intelligent jurists I've ever come into contact, except these two here. And so,
And our 12 colleagues.
and your colleagues, yes. But everyone always would like more resources. We have a problem with staff. Our staff are not quite up to, so some of our staff get paid the same amount as the person who is serving you at the local restaurant. They're doing very important business, and they're intelligent, and of course they're way above whatever it would take to serve hamburgers, but they're not being paid very well. And we're always trying to get our staff better pay. And the problem is there's not enough money to go around. We always ask the legislature. I'm not gonna say anything bad about the legislature, but we're always asking for more. Our county is growing in leaps and bounds. We are now, more than 650,000 people live in Johnson County. And look at the surrounding Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Missouri, Douglas County, Miami County. When you talk about the number of people who are coming into Johnson County to litigate, we're talking millions. And so the population that surrounds us, we're like a large city. And so we need the resources. And I'm not going to say we don't have them. We do the best with what we have, but we'd always like more.
That's a good
Well,
point.
I didn't swear to tell the whole truth. So I told you that was our last question, but we do have one more. Do you mind if we do take that?
All right, so maybe the last question, keep you on your toes. Trusting the system is hard for people in this political environment. What do you say to voters skeptical of all government institutions?
People, what was the last part of that?
Suspicious.
Suspicious.
Skeptical of all
government.
government institutions.
Yeah.
You know, be an informed voter, which is what the league is all about, I think. And I think it's good to be suspicious and skeptical and make sure that elected officials, judges, are doing their job. But be willing to do the work necessary to not just listen to what you may hear on the radio or the news and do your own independent investigation. I think that will help to build trust, but probably not a very good answer.
I don't think that this organization is for somebody just going down and voting a ticket on a certain party. And the same thing would be when you hear just vote no for judges. there shouldn't be any voter to go down and vote no on all the judges. They should do the necessary research and background investigation to decide to make an intelligent decision. So, and if they need that information to do that, there's plenty of resources to get it.
Well, the league here in Johnson County has been around for 72 years. So in that time, we've done a lot of educating, helping voters understand that it's necessary to have a voting plan, whether you're going to mail in your ballot, allow plenty of time, vote early, where do you go to do that, nonpartisan perspectives. So this is one example of how we're here to serve our community, and we are so grateful to each of you. Do you have any closing comment you would like to make before we let you get off that stage?
You know, if I could real quickly, this goes back to Patrick's question, and that is that I think that you can take a lot of pride as a Kansas voter in the Kansas judicial process that exists. This process is one that is designed to make sure that people have an opportunity to have their voice heard in court, and that whatever question you bring before the district courts or the appellate courts, that's going to be decided in light of the facts after hearing all of the evidence based on the law, and that's it. And so I think that people can take a lot of solace in that. If they're looking at other institutions, I think that there are other processes that you can trust, but you can really trust the judicial process that exists.
Should we all say in unison, don't just vote no on everything? That's our message
yes.
today.
It's yes.
Yes, or at least not no.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, and just as a reminder, you can go to the latest on the league website, www.lwvjoco.org, to find links to the information we talked about today and to this program. And we also have 2 additional meet and greets coming up, October 7th at Olathe Indian Creek Library and October 17th at Village Presbyterian Church. Can we all give a round of applause?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad.